It's Saturday afternoon on SABC1. You know what that means. Time for Game On. And I'm Sizwe Mabena, proud to be in your company. And as always, we'll be joined by the legendary Shane McGregor. Jerry Skosana not with us this week, so standing in for him is another legend in the way of broadcasting. That, of course, is Christopher Bongo, helping us break down the PSL's influence on the Africa Cup of Nations that is coming up in Cote d'Ivoire. Chris, a pleasure to be in your company.
Thank you.
It's been a while.
Long time.
Very long time. But let's get straight into it. Now, I'm going to give you two countries.
Yeah.
Egypt is one, but in this case, they'll come second. And the country that comes first is South Africa. Those two countries are special for two things. The most representation in the way of their leagues in this AFCON. What does that tell you about the influence South Africa and Egypt is having on African football on the whole?
Well, for me, what is important is to understand how AFCON works. Mm-hmm. Often when you go to AFCON, most European-based players, African players who are based in Europe, it is a time for them to showcase their talents, their availability for January window so that they can be sold. But the two countries that you just mentioned, South Africa and Egypt, they've got two leagues. By the way, both leagues are called Premier League.
Yeah.
They've got most local players playing in those leagues. That gives them a chance of having the majority of players from the national team coming from those leagues. Mm. So the influence is you have your local league having, you can say, a higher standard?
Yeah.
That's what you can say.
Now, you and I started following the AFCON at the same time, back in 2006 in Egypt. What was special about that Egypt team was there were so many players from Al Ahly and so many players in that Egypt team that won 2006, 2008, and 2010, 3 in a row, that came from the Egyptian local league and Al Ahly. Now, let's switch that to PSL. Switch that to, in this case, Mamelodi Sundowns. They've got the most players in the South African squad right now. Does that make sense to you?
It does. If you look at it around the world, in 2010 World Cup, Spain win the World Cup. If you look at the majority of players come from one club. And if you look at the totality, they come from two clubs. Mm. If you look at Egypt, when they won 3 times in the row, the totality of the players come from one club, the majority come from two clubs. Mm. What I am saying is, for you to have a dominance in a national team, you need your top 2 teams of your local league to produce 60 to 70% of your national team selection. Mm. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So we are getting there with Mamelodi Sundowns. The domination of Mamelodi Sundowns for the past 5 years, it is well written and it's factual.
Yeah.
So when you start having Mamelodi Sundowns players dominating in the national team selection, it is a good thing. The question is, are all those players dominating selection in Mamelodi Sundowns? Ah. That is another question that you have to look. Because you might have a Mamelodi Sundowns player who only play 70% of the game or 50% of the game as a starter, but often it comes as a substitute because you have a lot of players coming from Mamelodi Sundowns from different parts of the world. We have the same problem in DRC. TP Mazembe, great team, but in the starting 11, only 2 Congolese players playing for TP Mazembe. Yeah. So in the question here for Mamelodi Sundowns in South Africa is, how many of those players, they will be in starting 11 of South Africa, are in starting 11 of Mamelodi Sundowns?
Mm. Now, all in all, Egypt has 28 players that are represented from their league in the different countries in this AFCON. South Africa is 36. Now, just wanted to look at the countries that come from the PSL. Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, Zambia, Namibia, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Mozambique, Tanzania from out in the east. It's a nice spread, isn't it, across the continent?
Just to explain, PSL, the South African Professional League, is the most diverse league on the whole continent. Yeah. And it has been for almost the past 15 years. You have a lot of nationalities come to play in South Africa. Unfortunately, most of them get exported almost immediately, so they don't benefit in South Africa. But what you are saying at the moment is we have Namibia, the national team. They've got 80% of their players are regular in South African PSL. So representation, even the previous AFCON, South Africa had more players than any other, so which is good. For me, I think it is good for PSL.
Again, another contributing factor, maybe that one could argue, comes from the PSL, goalkeepers. On the continent over the years, last 20 or so years, there's been maybe a criticism towards African goalkeepers and their development compared to their counterparts worldwide. In this case, the PSL is having up a goalkeeper from Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea,
Probably
and
Ghana as
Ghana.
well. Yeah. Even the World Cup, we had goalkeeper coming from South Africa.
Yeah.
In the previous years, South Africa actually did not have a goalkeeper problem. South Africa had a lot of goalkeepers. Almost in every single team, best players, they were goalkeepers.
Is South Africa solving Africa's goalkeeping problem?
So now, because of that, the direction of importing goalkeeper become PSL. So we're having now PSL exporting goalkeepers. And like you said, we're at 4 at the moment at the World Cup. And this is the exclusion of South Africa itself, because South Africa has a 3 goalkeepers there, so which will make you 7 goalkeepers coming from South Africa. So once again, it is good. South Africa is an African league, and AFCON is an African competition. So if you have South Africa having more players in AFCON, it is great for everybody.
All in all, Chris, let's round it up now. The influence the PSL is having on the African game, the influence the African game is having on the PSL. All in all, this is a good give and take factor.
It is a good thing.
Great to the AFCON, great for us.
The best thing would be to have a 4-5 African leagues having this number of players moving around and exporting our players outside Africa.
Big question for you at home to think about and maybe start to think about going into the AFCON. Is it possible? Will it be that at the end of it all, at the end of this AFCON in Cote d'Ivoire, a player, one of the players, maybe more than just one, from the PSL will be amongst those lifting the Africa Cup of Nations trophy, no matter what the country is that wins it? Stay with Game On. We shift things along with Shane McGregor on the other side of this.
Check these guys. Let's show them how it's really done. I see it. Let's have a
Your feet like this.
Let's see how you play.
Your feet like this.
Welcome back to Game On as we move things along now. Go abroad out to the Premier League in England. And things are a bit different there. Joined now by Shane McGregor, of course. And Shane, in the past, English coaches, Ferguson and many others, would mention the AFCON in January. Now there's 2 beasts that visit England at this time of year. It's the AFCON and the Asian Cup as well. 17 clubs in total affected.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and some of the clubs, it's their star players. You take Spurs, for instance.
Yeah.
Song.
Yes.
Been on Song, excuse the pun. So, yeah, I mean, it's a big blow for them.
Yeah.
Endo has just started coming right for Liverpool. Now he's missing out. And then you got Hing Chang from Wolves, the striker, big burly guy. He's done well for them.
Yeah.
So they've lost 3 players there. These 3 clubs have lost 3 players as well as the African players. So it's a bit hard, Liverpool Salah. So it's a difficult one. People are going to look at it and say, well, why don't we just do it all under one umbrella and play at the same time tournaments? But
In the off-season,
yeah, it's part and parcel of it, you've got to learn to live with it.
Now, there's a difference here. When you look at sides such as Nottingham Forest, so many.
Yeah, 6
players.
players. 6 players.
They're missing out on, including some of the other lowly sides, one could say. What's the difference between them and the likes of City, who are at the top? Yes, Liverpool, you mentioned Salah, but just Salah and maybe one other player. Arsenal don't have too many they're missing. Some of the top clubs aren't suffering like some of the lower clubs.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, you got, like, say for Arsenal, I mean, the guys that are gone are not in their starting lineup.
Sure.
So it's not a major blow for them.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a blow because when this time the season comes, you need all the players that you got because of injuries, fatigue, that type of thing. But it's not a major blow because there's no major players leaving. Man City, very clever. They don't have any players going, So they got a lot of European-based players. Liverpool, unfortunately, like I said, Salah's gone. You got Endo gone now, and then they've lost their right back. So that's made
Trent,
it even
yeah.
Trent Alexander makes it even worse for them. At a time where you need all your players. But it's a matter of you just mentioned Forest. For Forest, they need those players. It's part and parcel of it. They haven't got the money that Man City have got. They haven't got the money Arsenal got. They haven't got the money Liverpool have got. So they need to bring in quality players at a cheaper rate. So and that's the problem with them, is they've had to do that. And unfortunately now they're going to pay the price. They're going to miss those players for the next month.
Quality. When you look at the quality of player that has left each of these clubs, depending on which club you look at individually, but on the whole now, the fact that the Premier League is able to continue, even with these players gone, what does this say about the quality of players that have left and the quality of players still remaining in England and able to compete?
You see, it's all about your squads. It's all about having a player to fulfill that position. For instance, Chelsea, Jackson's gone.
Yeah.
They haven't been firing on all cylinders. It's going to be easier for them to replace Jackson, but I mean, he is a quality player.
Yeah.
So how do you replace that? You've got to bring other players in. And it's the squad as such in each team. You've got to have a decent squad. Liverpool, unfortunately, have got players to come in, but they're going to miss Salah a lot. I mean, 151 goals. He's the creator in the team as such. They're going to miss him big time. So Song, I mean, how do you replace Song in the Spurs team? And they've just gained through a bad patch at the moment. Very difficult to replace him. But the smaller teams, it's even worse because they rely on those players week in and week out. And it's going to be a big blow. Forest, going to be a big blow for them. Brentford have got 4 players. So it's a difficult one. Teams are going to be saying, we got to strengthen our squads going through the season.
So, in just rounding it up so it makes sense to the layman, is it fair to say clubs such as City can afford to avoid players that might be away in January and February every couple of years because they can afford it?
They can afford it.
Some of the other clubs like Forest, while they're looking for bargain players that are still good enough to partake in the league, thus have to at times look past the fact that there's Asian players, there's African players that might be away. They need them.
Yeah, they do need them. Look, don't get me wrong. City had Mahrez at one stage, so they lost him. So, but I mean, they always look to minimize it as much as possible. But when you're a small club, if you've got a quality player on the market, you're going to sign him, whether he's African, whether he's from Asia, whether he's wherever, you're going to sign him. So they got to be looking at things. Forest, unfortunately, 6 and Brentford with 4 are going to be saying, whoa, we're going to have a look at this in the future.
Now, how interesting does that make things for you as a connoisseur of the game when you consider England? We've just come out of a difficult December period. We know what comes with playing through December over the years following the English game. After that, things get even more interesting with clubs losing players to these tournaments. Does that not make the English Premiership even more interesting that way?
Makes it more interesting, makes the levels of the playing field. But you look at Man City. Man City have got they don't have any players going. Plus, they've got De Bruyne coming back. So it looks like they've
3 players.
Exactly. So like for teams like that, it's a bit different. But teams have got to get around it. Liverpool have got the squad. Whether it's the same without Salah, I'm not 100%. But they just got to get around it and try and get through this period as you've done through December.
Which club do you think will be affected the least?
Man City, obviously. Man City, Arsenal. I would say, Man City, Arsenal.
Liverpool to some extent? Or
Liverpool are bad. No, Liverpool are bad without... they've lost two quality players, so they're going to be affected. And as I said, with the injury, it makes it even worse, So Man City, definitely.
Interesting times then. All the more reason to keep tabs on what's happening in England, especially looking at the effect what happens on the continent here in Africa and in Asia will have in the league out in England and how the clubs will slug it out for the next month or so. Stay with Game On. We still have another surprise interview on the other side of this. Welcome back to Game On. Now, we've just come out of a festive period, and what we know is hugely popular in South Africa during the festive period, what we like to know as Kasi Games. Now, I myself personally was down in Vosloorus for what's known as the El Clasico, and have the absolute pleasure of introducing Gifens Mwaki, who of course sits alongside me as a founding member of the El Clasico. Of course, Hollywood Bets was there, and let's find out more about it before we get into the nitty-gritty.
Ibhola lasekasi yamnandi into. It's all about skill, the passion. And in Vosloorus this December, it was all about El Clasico.
The El Clasico Cup came to be my partner and I. We saw a gap in the market with Four-Stock Diski 99 no longer happening. And obviously during the festive times, people try and get together over football, which is possibly the most loved sport in South Africa. So obviously after 4 years of no football within Vosloorus, we decided to take the concept back to the people and curate the El Clasico Cup.
While the social impacts of football and tournaments like this is clear for everyone to see, it's the purity of the game that makes it so beautiful. Players have the opportunity to shine and be seen like rising star Lonwabo Aguero Makubu, and they have the opportunity to build a cult following both on the football field and in the social media world like Xolani Blackberry Nala.
Le gama nganikwa enye out engikhula nayo nje kudala uyazi Blackberry bekuyi number 1 njoba sekune iPhone, so plus nami kudala hayi bese ngishisa kakhulu hayi mangilinyathela abadala BIS faka lento nje hayi shukela kuphela.
Kamuka kumunye coach bakancoach uTariza. Wangibona ngidlala ku Ellis Park lento aqala ukungibiza ngoAguero from there.
Ngiyajabulisa ukudlala la elokishini because kula sikhulela khona elokishini. So yazi ukuthi kunama fan kune support ebhaya from emafamilini everyone wasekasi. So kuyajabulisa ukudlala eKasi, ngiya-enjoy because everyone uyakusupporta ngayo.
We support la iFusto, especially 2018 nkulu kakhulu for the team lena. Bahlezi support each and every game, bahlezi bakhona. Ba make sure ukuthi bakhona, they start imoto ziyaphuma, bahlezi bakhona.
Whether you are Blackberry or Aguero, it's all about dreaming big and praying to get a break that could change your life forever. It's a reality for so many players, and through the support of sponsors like Hollywood Bets and tournaments like El Clasico, it's possible for dreams to come true.
From me usaseyintwana mina ngaso sonke isikhathi uzimisele mawuzodlala ibhola because you never know ukuthi vele kubukele ba, especially manje elokishini ama tournaments are exposed into eziningi, so anama TV anani, so asinike opportunity ebhaya ukuthi sizi impress ukuthi njalo usokwazi ukuthola ibhani kubo NFD PSL. So manje sokusimple ukuthi from Kasi to professional akusafani nakudala ukuthi ama chances bo amancane.
Ngifuna ukudlala Europe, ilento igoli yami leyo ukuthi ngifuna ukufika ngifike ku Europe. South Africa obviously stepping stone nje. PSL nakuDled ngisafisa ukudlala nakuDled nakhona njengoba manje ngidlala ku ABC Mthiphe nakuDled ngisafuna ukudlala nakhona ngizwe pressure yakhona ngifike naku PSL.
It makes me feel really good for the fact that we've actually had a couple of players that came through the ranks. Players from as young as 10 that started with the Clasico Cup Sports Network. A player that comes to mind now is Pelelani Mbelase, who was signed to Swallows, Morocco Swallows. He came through these ranks as a junior player from the age of 10, went through the various academies and ended up signing a pro contract with Morocco Swallows.
El Clasico was a tournament for the ages, and after some intense battles throughout, it was Umlilo who were victorious in the 2023 edition of this fast-growing tournament.
Bengizothanda ukubonga ama-organizer we-El Clasico. Siqhubeke siyenze lokhu ikhulu izoba hoti le tournament yofana nabo Phillies, so and yeah siyabonga ukuthatha inento ukuthatha isikhathi senu kuza kuzoorganizela ama tournament asona nisikiphe emakasi. Siyabonga siqhubeke siyenze kanjalo. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Well, interesting stuff. Gifens, thank you so much for your time. I've had the pleasure now of spending the last few weeks with you and in your company. Had the joy of seeing the success of the El Clasico in Vosloorus. let's talk to us about the importance of Gussie Games and how Hollywood Bets is helping you in that regard.
First and foremost, thank you so much for having me, Cesar.
It's a pleasure.
Before anything, I mean, football is a team sport, you know.
Yeah.
It's important to acknowledge that it teaches you life skills, you know, everything from discipline, teamwork, communication. And in as far as the Gussie Games and the importance, it's almost as if they form a pathway from unorganized, unstructured football to your pro ranks.
And the effect it has on, firstly, the community and the players that are playing under you, the fact that you're affecting lives. Talk to us about that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, in that aspect, Cesar, we're looking at a player transitioning from just a player who plays in Gussie football to a pro player, you know. So our platform actually allows to give them the leeway in developing and being a part of future prospects as a pro player. And when it comes to the community in itself, it's also has quite a very big knock on the economy. You know, we've got a lot of families that rely on Gussie tournaments to be able to feed and support and provide for their families.
Now, you've got a long way in your time and in your involvement with Gussie Games and the El Clasico, to be exact. I see now there's cameras. I see there's streaming. You've moved a long way and are taking the game a long way forward. Talk to us about that.
So the whole idea with providing that platform is to actually reach a wider audience, a broader audience, you know. So you'll get scouts in Cape Town who are looking for a certain type of player, and it almost gives them that reach in a sense that if they see them firsthand on an El Clasico game, it's easier for them to reach out and to actually get the context of that particular player.
Now, the communities that you're involved with, in this case, Vosloorus, as we've seen here, how they accepted or welcomed you into the community in working hand in hand in building this thing you're working on?
I mean, when we started off, Cesar, the community was a bit apprehensive.
Yeah.
I mean, top of my head, just to think of a story that comes to mind, there was a lady who actually said that we should stop playing because we mess up her windows, the dust. You know? So again, the dust messes up the windows. Yeah, you know, and it just happened that the lady's son was actually playing for one of the teams. So it was just a matter of just making them understand the importance of us having these games. You know, would you rather have them mess the windows up, or would you rather have them go and do drugs?
Yeah.
You know, so once they understood the importance and the relevance of our games, they actually gave us a chance.
And going forward, you going to continue with the Gussie Games, continue with El Clasico?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we're in our 6th edition. So obviously, we've had calls from as far as Mpumalanga for teams wanting to come and join. You know, so it speaks to what we do as a collective.
So there's a growth factor.
There's a growth factor, exactly.
Yeah.
So again, we believe that we strongly contribute in the ecosystem of the football world.
Yeah.
Because most of these players, actually, I'd say a good 20% of pro players have actually come through our ranks. You look at the likes of your Kiabetswe, Rakosa, Upington City, Thabang Kobela, Sekhukhune United, just to name a few. So we believe that we've got a very, very important role to play in the whole ecosystem.
Well, there you have it, a huge role to play in the ecosystem. Thank you so much to Kifenso Moagi, the El Clasico founder, one of the founding members of El Clasico down in Vosloorus. In the December time, if you have time, come the end of this year, I suggest just take some time to go down there and enjoy what many of us across the country have grown to love, including Hollywood Bets, and that's Gussie football. So, you're watching Hollywood Game On. I very nearly said Hollywood Bets, but it is Game On, and the end of the show. So, from myself, Susan Mapena, thank you to Gwifenswe, Christopher Pongo for standing in, of course, for Jerry Skosana. So that's Shane McGregor. Till next week, it's click, click, bang.
I saw a cherry, and it was